and above AT&T certified, which is outstanding. Jason Simonet over here is going to be passing around the AIA sign-in sheet, so if you're looking for course credit and to get a certificate out of this, please make sure your name and information is on that, and we will get that certificate to you later this week. So quickly about this course, it will provide hands-on learning utilizing a live mock-up of curved wall glazing assembly. Provide a step-by-step overview of the installation process for glazed curved wall systems. The course will focus on how to control safety, installation steps, process controls, and quality inspections during installation. For AI purposes, there are several learning objectives that are up on the screen there, but what I hope the audience here takes away is a better appreciation for the technical expertise required and training required to ensure that glazing in general is performed correctly. Better understanding of potential risks in curved wall installation specifically, how those risks can be mitigated through properly implemented process controls, and lastly, how certification for contractors and glazers ties together to ensure positive project outcomes. So for the architects and the project stakeholders here today, we want to think about the building envelope holistically. Air, water, vapor, it can come in through any different system. We're going to focus on glazing specifically, but for the architects, there's interfaces between air barriers, between glazing, where who's really responsible. I mean, that is a common failure point and definitely needs extra attention put on. So specifically to glazing, some of the challenges historically, project specifications haven't adequately addressed installer qualifications. And what I mean by that is just saying, oh, you've been in business X number of years, you've done similar projects, the manufacturer has signed off on your team of installers through a training program. It's not getting deep enough. There's far more to this than just those simple things. Glazing industry does not have a consistent standard for glazer knowledge. This is where AT&T certification is coming in to help address that problem. Systems and their applications become more complicated, requiring technical expertise, adequate process controls to create consistent outcomes. This is the NACC piece for the contractor to help them have that technical expertise and have the process controls to create positive outcomes. And it really does start at the specification level. Not only that it's in the project to begin with, but that it's ultimately enforced. Because when root causes are created, if on that third floor you're like, there's a problem. There's probably going to be that same problem on the fifth floor, on the sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, all the way up the building. The amount of effort required to rework those issues after the fact, we're not here to talk horror stories so much. You've all heard some, maybe you've experienced some yourselves, but they're costly, they're disruptive, bringing in cranes, disrupting occupants. No one wants to be a part of that. There are ways that we can, as an industry, help ensure that things are getting done right the first time around, and there's not any repeat performances. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug to talk a little bit about what they're working on with our curb wall mock-up over there.
Good morning, everyone. So as you can see up here, this what you're looking at is a mock-up curb wall we call our rigs for the AT&T certification testing. What you see right here is basically, it's just imitating what we would do on the side of a high-rise building. And what AT&T is focused on is giving us all the aspects in one general mock-up of what needs to happen, all the steps and processes to keep one of the main enemies out, which is water. What you're looking at now, Billy and I have already got everything plumb level and square with our clips, with our window and deadwood clips anchored, with the T-bolts through, all the processes where we have 4 of our thermal breakage for the shimming in between the clips and the tube for oxidation purposes. And basically what we have now is, everybody, I feel that there's a lot of people that can install a curtain wall. but it's making it work over years and having it safe for these buildings that are going up in Center City and everything like that. We have all this negative pressure inside the building that's constantly trying to fight against what we're installing. It's something that's water inside the building. So our goal is to keep this water outside. So Billy and I are just going to go through some of the processes like we would do with the AT&T certification. So as we have right now is we have our clips on the side anchoring the framing. This side, on the left-hand side of this framing, it's basically a perimeter wall. Over here would be a continuation of the current wall, going so forth. But for training purposes and certifications, this is the rig that we have. So what we're doing is all the steps are in the drawing. We have a half-inch minimum gap between the tubes. We have the splice lead inside, which has, you won't be able to see it, has a bottom breaker tape that goes around for thermal resistance and also water. Down inside the tube here, we place a piece of Baccarat, that's the bottom breaker tape that Billy has. We place a piece of Baccarat in there for further sealing. So when we do seal around the entire perimeter of this tube, everything we know is sealed from here to here. Once we get to there, we have our rubber and the reglets going through the horizontal rubber members, and we're going to, before the glazing process of this, what we do is we peel back the corners, vertical and horizontal in each corner, and we're going to fill that reglet with caulk, and we're going to push this to the side and sandwich these two pieces, vertical and horizontal, together to create that seal. So technically, when all these four corners are sealed in one zone, you would be able to technically pull this rubber out and it would be one square rectangle. This way we know that there's no water penetration going within those corners of the perimeter. All the screw heads that attach the horizontal members to the vertical, there's inside, underneath here, there's a shear lock assembly that goes against the vertical tube that the horizontal members get attached to. And what Billy's doing right now is sealing all the holes where there's any penetration through that metal. All these steps of process are easily forgotten and sometimes misplaced. And like Scott said earlier, when it's not done on the second and third floor, most likely it's not done going further up the building. Next, what Billy's doing is, since each window opening is considered a zone, everything is its own zone. So right now, Billy's filling 3 sides of the ceiling and placing a zone dam inside the corner, which creates our bridge from top to bottom, so water cannot go to the next opening. Once he tools over top of this and underneath it, it gets tooled and slipped out, almost like a ram to funnel any water that was able to possibly get in to funnel down the channel and over here onto the horizontal. Finally, the next step here is once everything is sealed, all 4 corners are zone dammed and caulked and sealed, is when you move on to the glazing process. So we have, up here we have the setting blocks, which, if anyone can see them, they have almost a channel at the bottom. That is, they sit down, and there's also a leg on the back end that sits underneath the rubber on the back end. So they're going to be put, those are going to be put in quarter points for each piece of glass.
I definitely want to highlight kind of what's on the screen. We're working to minimize air and moisture infiltration. Things are thermally broken. We're accounting for solar shading and heat requirements, durability and protecting the actual material. and following industry-leading practices to do this. Because at the end of this, and when they're done, I mean, we can build things that look really cool, but it's about the occupant. It's about who's actually going to be in that space and use that building. We want them to be comfortable, healthy, safe, and so following all these steps and making sure that we're touching on those correctly is going to help ensure all of that. So while they keep working, I'm going to talk a little bit more about process control. So at a very high level, I've got my chart up there, the 5 different steps of how you implement process control. So first, you've got to set what does right look like? What is the standard that you're trying to achieve? How are we going to measure to that standard? I mean, having that effective measuring tool is probably as important as that standard. If you can't measure something correctly, you're never going to be able to control it. You're never going to be able to improve it. Merging them actually together, gaining that data, analyzing it, and then what do you do with it? Are you going to take corrective action? Are you going to implement preventative action to ensure that you're course correcting along the way so that ultimately you have the desired outcome that you want? So I've got a few questions here, and feel free from the audience to help me answer them. But anyone want to, if you could simplify it down, does anyone want to venture a guess at what process control means? I'll give you a hint. So, proactive monitoring. We want to monitor this process as we go. We're not going to get to the end, we're not going to get to the 20th story and realize, oh shoot, we failed water testing on the 3rd floor and on every subsequent floor. We want to take that proactive monitoring to ensure that we are conforming as we go. It's much easier to fix a problem when it is small and contained than when you've got the entire building to rework. So, with that understanding, maybe this is an obvious question, but can glazing installation be improved through process controls? I'm going to say yes. I mean, it's got to be systematic, has to define the measuring process, and it can help it implemented properly. So how can process controls and glazing be implemented? Having SOPs, checklists, ways to inspect, simplest photographs that you're going to load up in a Procore or some other software tool can help you achieve this. Doug, in your experience, I mean, how have you in the field seen process control implemented? Why don't you get a step away?
So out in the field, good. So out in the field, there's a lot of different processes that, depending on who's running the project. Fortunately, a lot of our members are AGMT certified, so we're going through this process. We kind of know this is drilled into our brains now of the correct way of doing thermal in general. But we have a lot of times we'll have different processes where somebody will take that lead role out in the field to show those steps and make sure all these steps are getting done properly throughout the project.
Yeah. And obviously, why is this important to whole building enclosure? We're trying to ensure consistent outcomes and mitigate risks. So, to dig into some more of the benefits of process control and verification, it's going to tell your supervisors, it's going to tell the Billy, the Doug, what do you actually need to look for? Because if I don't specify what they should be looking at, Doug may consider other aspects, Billy may look at other things based on his experience. These guys are great. There are many fantastic lasers all across the country, but we need to define what they actually are looking for in order to ensure that they're going to be consistent. It's also going to signal to the entire organization that quality is important, because we are going to look at this, but it's not just, well, we're looking at it, it's what are you going to do with the information? If a problem is identified along the way as construction is in progress, the quickest way to kill people's engagement and motivation to want to do the right thing is to not take action. Man, my experience before this Anheuser-Busch, middle of the night on a night shift, blocking tens of thousands of dollars worth of beer is not a fun scenario, but when it is outside of deviation, you gotta do that right. You gotta do the right thing to ensure, because at the end of the day, like you said, this is about the building documents, the owners, the other project stakeholders. So if you want your people to take action and do the right thing, you gotta present that problem, take action on it. It's not, well, it's good enough for today, let's just keep moving, we're behind schedule. That's not the answer. And when you do that, your workforce is going to surprise you with what they can accomplish. They're going to take that action. They're going to elevate their performance. They're going to ensure that they're doing the right thing. They don't want to come back and do something the second or third time. They want to get it done right the first time. So help them accomplish that. And holistically, if you're having consistent problems, you're going to be able to identify those, develop preventative actions, develop better processes to prevent those in the first place, so that you are successful in the long run. So this whole idea of certification and how this came about, and it's great that we're here in Atlantic City with Glass Metal Alliance and Industry Council 21. When I say industry identified best practices and systems, a lot of folks in this room were part of the group that helped create both of these certification programs. So for anyone in the audience, if you served on our board of directors, on the certification committee, beta testing, steering committees along the way over the last 10 years, you could please stand up and raise your hand. I know there's more in the back, but there are many people here. Right now, there's Sean Kimberline. He's one of the founding agencies board members. Pat McIntyre, Mike Laughlin, Mike Foxwell on the AGNCC board of directors. So I say that because this isn't, I didn't dream up these certification programs or what it takes to be certified. The industry, across the country and over in Canada to say what is right, what does the industry need to be doing to ensure that we're having a successful outcome. So you combine those best practices with competent staff, competent placers that verify that they do know what they're doing through a certification program. It's our best way to ensure that positive outcome. So do owners, architects, and general contractors need to distinguish and qualify building contractors from others? I'd say probably other contractors in the room are going to likely general contractors in today's day and age, they're not the subject matter experts in the subcontracting world. They understand the big picture things. They want to see glass going up on a building. How it happens, not everyone, especially in the younger generation, actually understands the mechanics of that. So differentiating glazing contractors is a huge, critical way to do this. My little graphic up there, what condition created a defect like that, and ultimately, what kind of problems are you going to see?
That there would be basically poor measurement. So if someone put glass in there, right now there's absolutely no glass plate within that frame. So as you can see, that hill that's slid through there, that's just more reason for water to get through. And once that happens, who knows what the other side of that glass looks like. Either that glass is just the wrong size or it needs to just be pushed over beyond the rubber.
So how are you mitigating that right now on the curtain wall you're working on?
Well, for the curtain wall now, so we have, there's a formula that for all glass manufacturers for different products that we measure a daylight opening at a certain amount of glass weight that's recommended for each system that you use. So on this curtain wall, as you can see, a building we kept going with it, but what we have now is we have our pressure plate covers, which have they thermal rubber on the end of it that seats against the glass. So once this glass, we center this glass up equally on both sides to cover the band, and then we apply these pressure plate covers. For the verticals, there's all these extra holes in it. These will all be sealed before we put our covers on. And for the horizontals that Bill's installing right now, you'll notice that there's slotted holes, and we're going to face them up. And that's our weaving system. So when finds its way inside somehow, it's able to go through that channel, through that zone down, and funnel down with that ramped ceiling down underneath the setting blocks, and that could escape the curtain wall from the bottom of the beauty covers and through the pressure plates.
So do glazing contractors do data field checks? And hopefully at this point in the presentation, the answer is yep, they sure do. So what may be to the untrained eye, just a little cosmetic effect, is actually going to be a huge potential issue. And Doug, people elaborating on some of these photos I'm throwing out there. What may seem simple, a small opening, what can this lead to?
Yeah, anything, like look at this picture right here, like anything between a curtain wall and a storefront, whether it's a shear block insulation or screw spline insulation, like that there is just poor fabrication, but, aesthetically, whether it's on the third, fourth, fifth floor or on the first floor, some untrained professionals out there might try to just put ceiling over top of that. That's not the case. We're trying to train everybody to do things properly before you even get to that situation, let alone the aesthetics of the step between both horizontals on each side of the work too. This is just something that's a failure, aesthetically and for thermal and sealing, for water penetration.
And at some point here, I've been meaning to ask you, what should a life expectancy of your common glazing systems be?
Life expectancy, I guess
30 years?
Per manufacturer, there's glass expectancy, there's aluminum expectancy, depending on what the material's made of and where it's from, I guess, and it's kind of a close statement. I feel, 30 years, yeah.
Somewhere in that neighborhood, but because at the end of the day, owners, architects, general contractors, they need to be assured that proper policies are in place, because those little defects that some of these photos are showing, they're going to lead to a voided warranty at the end of the day, and this idea of simply getting the job done does not equal success. Getting the job done correctly, ensuring that it's done right, that it's going to be successful, that the project, the system, it's going to have its life expectancy. Coming back 2 or 3 years later to reapply sealants because things weren't cleaned properly to begin with, or the right sealant was even used in the first place. These are all very costly and completely preventable mistakes. Doug, anything else to elaborate on from the photos up on the screen?
Yeah, again, if anyone knows, obviously, like in this storefront, the picture up here, stacking setting blocks, that's fine. Stacking the way that they're stacking here, but right now, that would restrict the glass stop from closing the system up. There's a lot of times you'll see a setting block that's pushed back too far, whether it's a curtain or a storefront system, and dealing with an IGU, an insulated glass unit, you have inner and outer door light on each side of the spacer, and if that setting block isn't all the way out to the exterior, we all know that that outer light will eventually slide down due to gravity, which could cause leakage or breakage.
So specifically how NACC, and we'll get more at a high level what is the North American Contractor Certification Program, but specifically there are a couple key requirements that all certified contractors have to follow in order to gain their certification and maintain it. First is they have to have manufacturer's installation instructions available at point of use, and they need to demonstrate that they're actually following them. Shop drawings and other construction documents, they may lay out the details and what things should look like, but they don't have the sequencing of construction. The documents that these guys have up on the table here call out specifically how the system goes together and what is the sequence, because as Doug may elaborate a little bit more on, if something gets covered up or like you skip the step, you miss something, and just like, well, I'll just talk over the top of it and it'll be fine. That's not going to be the right answer. That's not going to guarantee that that building performs the way it should over the course of its expected life. The sequencing of construction is critically important in ensuring that contractors have manufacturer's installation instructions is key. If for some reason that manufacturer doesn't provide instructions for that specific system or project, or they're doing something that's really unique, this is where mock-ups come in. have the mock-up. Use that as the template to correctly sequence your construction. Then the contractor should develop a series of instructions for the guys so that they know the right sequence to follow as they build things. Any examples, Doug, from your experience in using installation instructions?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, the way I look at the relationship between, I know, our local in general and the AT&T, having the certification, I went years thinking that, that I was doing the correct, and I was. I think that this certification holds you accountable, and it gives you a footprint on the correct situation and what needs to happen each time. Like, out in the field, when you get to this point right here, that's a good point, Scott, with, like, so if you have a crew on one side of the building and a crew on the other side of the building, it's based on trust. It's based on that trusting a certified installer is putting that curtain on that side, the same as the other side of the building. And when you get to this point, the glass is all, everything's buttoned up, you put your pressure plates on, all the screws are torqued to what the manufacturer says. All these extra holes, which we all know are going to line up in the pressure plate, as long as these weep holes are up to allow the water to funnel out, all this now has to be sealed. All your screw heads, any hole, any penetration through that metal into the system has to be sealed before the cover plates go on. The cover plates are purely aesthetic. Yeah, and sometimes when you get to this point, sometimes the vertical covers would snap on the vertical pressure plate before you would install the pressure plate here. What you see here is you see a gap on each side of the horizontal pressure plates. All of this right here gets sealed. Any bridge, anything that we can bridge to make a thermal bridge between one piece and two pieces of metal is what we're looking to do here. Once all the screw heads are covered and everything's there, you've got to make sure your weeps are up, then that's when you start applying the covers. We're not going to install the covers today for demonstration purposes. Like I said, they're basically just aesthetic, but those cover plates will have weep holes, and those weep holes will be opposite. So once the water falls through the zone and out the top weep holes on the pressure plate, all the aesthetic cover plates, the weep holes will be at the bottom, so it can find its way out.
And as they're working through this, not only should they follow manufacturer's installation instructions, but supervision on that project should have a way to verify that they are following it correctly. And this isn't we're going to check every single thing that they do, but it needs to be a systematic and random process to sample what work is being done. And this is, contractors can decide, what level of risk are they going to assume. If this is a 10-story building, well, let's check one opening per floor, make sure that we're doing things correctly. So for NACC specifically, we want to see verification procedures around opening steel blades, hardware that's being installed, framing the metalwork, sealants and gaskets, glass and proper installation of it. And then, as Doug was talking about, the weeping system and water management, because it is so critical to get those steps right. And even the simple little things that may be wrong and not even noticed with an untrained eye can cause massive problems down the road. So specifically, just to throw some examples of what these checklists that we recommend and help contractors develop and use to ensure consistent outcomes. So for the opening to be glazed, I know it may be a little hard to read, but it's a simple checklist to ensure that things are being done consistently and done correctly. Just assuming that the openings would be for the drawings, as any of the contractors and glazers in the room will tell you, great way to set yourself up for failure. You've got to go out and field measure. You've got to make sure that things are accurate to what you've got going on, what you're expecting. Even little deviations in the size of that can have big impacts to project timelines and getting material shipped in correctly. So specifically, this is an example of the curtain wall installation checklist that we provided. It's going to touch on a number of those different items that we look at, but it's a simple, it's an easy-to-use form that installers, foremen, superintendents can utilize to consistently ensure that things are being done correctly. Doug, anything out there that you'd like to call out or other steps you guys are taking right now?
This checklist is something I feel like everybody should have out there, because Without even looking at that, as you see, like when we first started this presentation, you know, the frames plumb level and square, obviously that's always what we're looking for, anchorage points. We went through everything else, basically zone names inserted. There were zone names at all four corners of each zone. We have the splice sleeve with the bond breaker tape. We have our half-inch minimum gap between all members, pressure plates, covers, and everything that gets called for expansion. The shims that are between the clips and the tube for oxidation, electrolysis, and glass lights equal. I mean, this right here, if this was something that you could see where a foreman could check, like use this as a checklist in the field, this would be ideal. Because I feel like everything, that's why we're trying to steer to get certified for this AGNT. We've adapted at our training facility, once we all took this AGNT, there's a good portion, I think there's about a third of our local at this time right now that has the certification and have recerted and haven't let anything lapse or anything. But we've adopted this at our training facility through our 4-year apprenticeship. So we basically base our 4-year apprenticeship leading up to AGNT being that final exam once everybody is out of their apprenticeship. That is our goal. Our goal is to get all our apprentices through the 4 years and give them the best knowledge based on this AGNT certification. We feel that this sets the precedence for installers and the way things that should and need to be done out in the field to build the best quality product that we could build.
Because all of this is tying together. At the end of the day, customers are getting what they pay for. Architects in the room, your design is actually being brought to life successfully, and it's going to be there for a long time. I mean, we won't hit on all the little other examples here, but that's the end goal of this. Satisfied customer, building documents have what they need, everybody's happy, the general contractors mitigated risk on the project successfully by using qualified subcontractors for the qualified workforce. So specifically talk about the NACC program here, so everyone has a little clear idea of what goes into that. It is an annual, typically multi-day, on-site and rotates between on-site and remote assessment of the company's operations. It's far more in-depth than just the process control that we talked about. There's 52 different categories that our assessors are going to evaluate companies on. We're going to visit their primary facilities, so office, shop, and warehouse, and then actually be out on a job site and spend at least half a day or a full day there with the contractor. Because that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where this process control, idea of process control and verification procedures are going to be implemented. And we want to see that in action. So there's five program components. We're going to look at their business practices, validate that hey, this company's been in business, they're stable, they're going to be around. If there were to be a warranty claim, they're going to be here to fulfill it at the end of the day. Safety. I mean, this is maybe even more paramount than the quality aspect. They can't just be, well, we've got a safety manual. It sits on the safety manager's desk and collects dust. That's an wrong answer. You're not going to be certified with that kind of mentality. It should be a living document that this company moves, everything they do is tied back to it. That they take proper actions to ensure safety is at the forefront of everything they're doing. The contract administration processes, that's just simply, let's ensure that we're doing things consistently, we're following the right processes and procedures, we're not missing the little things. I think someone once said, the contractor that wins the job probably missed the most going through the specification and going through those project documents. You don't want to be that guy that's caught behind the 8 ball on a job. So it's helping contractors be more thorough through that. Quality management systems, this is the meat and potatoes of the certification program. Ensuring that contractors say what they do what they say, and have the evidence to prove it. And then the glazing process piece, from receiving material to the final installation, how do they go about that? Do they have adequate procedures, policies, SOPs, the checklist that we showed in place to ensure positive outcomes? Yesterday we just hit 100 certified contractors across the country, so it's been a long time coming, almost 12 years to get there, but that's a big milestone for us. We've got many more in the pipeline coming, but this is a major achievement for a company to have this standard. I mean, it's the only thing in the glass industry that's recognizing contractors as doing the right things, having those processes in place. So if you work with a company like this, you should, I would fully expect you to see a positive difference in how they do business. And then for the personnel certification, so this is not just for anyone off the street. They've got to have at least 7,500 hours of experience for approximately 5 years, and an extra 10 even qualify to take the test. Because I'm not here to train anyone. That's through apprenticeship programs, through FTI, and what they do. We're here to evaluate, do they have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to successfully complete work to mitigate the risk that projects like this are going to have. So they have to take a knowledge-based test, a written test. It's 125 multiple-choice questions. They get 2 hours to complete that. Then, what really, in the world of personnel certification, that sets this apart is the hands-on test. So this is just the example of the curtain wall that our guys put together, but there's photos of the other 2 tests. So they build a curtain wall mock-up, storefront, they apply sealants, both weather and structural, and you can't fake this. I've been the program manager for almost 5 years. I'm not passing this test. I don't have the ability to do what these guys do day in and day out. It takes years on the job, it takes adequate training, and that technical expertise to be able to do this work correctly. And that's who we're recognizing. So there's just over about 2,200 certified glazers around the U.S. and in Canada now, and that number is growing quickly. But the other piece, this isn't a one and done. Every 4 years, AGMT technicians have to come back with at least 32 hours of continuing education, another 4,000 hours of work experience, and to pass the current version of that written test. The idea is that they're not stagnant, they're always learning, they're getting better, just like the architects here to get this hour of continuing ed. Same idea. And the 4,000 hours, that's to ensure that you're still active in the trade. It doesn't do us any good to continue to certify people that aren't working in the field as glazers. And to kind of tie this all together and wrap this up here, both programs, it's one mission. It's to have better glazing outcomes. And that's going to rely on qualified glazing contractors going through the NACC certification process, implementing quality management systems, having process controls in place, and competent installers recognized and certified through AGMT certification. So, with that being said, anybody have any questions? Anything for Doug or Billy or myself? We'll also have our booth over there to come talk to me as well. And if anyone didn't get a chance to sign in on the sheet, please see Jason there in the red. But glazingcertification.com is the website. There's a lot of great resources, a lot of great case studies, and other things to check out and learn more. And for the architects, I have brochures on how to specify this if you're not familiar, but there's also resources online to understand how to properly specify NACC and AGMT certification on your future projects. So with that, any questions? Let's call for questions. Nope? All right. Well, thank you for your time and attention today, and enjoy the rest of the session.
Let's hear it one more time for Scott.